Welcome to In the News for December 17th, 2021. I am Brett Birdie from appsandlaw.com.
This is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hey, Brett.
Good morning, Jeff. It's good to see you here, a week before Christmas, or a week and 1 day before Christmas. Hopefully, if you need any of those last-minute Christmas gifts, I actually went into an Apple store yesterday. I needed to upgrade my brand new MacBook Pro. I'm very excited. Haven't had time to open it and get it all open yet, but I used the excuse that my daughter needs an upgraded laptop, so she'll get this in one, and then I get a brand new one.
Oh, well, you're so nice to your daughter.
I know. Aren't I?
That's just fantastic. I know. Really, the spirit of the season, yes.
I know, but they were busy, man. I mean, people still coming in, right? And people picking up. It's just, I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of big crowds in like stores, especially around the holidays. But anytime you go to an Apple store, I like it, and it's just fun to kind of watch people. And sometimes it pains me because people ask the silliest questions, and I can just overhear. And I was like, I want to help you. Like, let me tell you how to use that. Like, no, that's the iPad 12.9. Here's the okay. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. So speaking of fun. And if you do get a new iPad or a new iPhone for the holidays, this past week, Apple released a small upgrade, and I call it small, Jeff, because it's 15.2. But the more I read about this, it was a pretty big update, 15.2. So we did iOS 15 back in September, October, I believe. And then we've had 15.1, and then this past week 15.2, and it is pretty jam packed with some upgrades. You wrote about it, which you had a great article on this, and then there's a couple of other links that you had this week in your post as well.
Yeah. That's one thing I've noticed over the last few years. It seems like it used to be the 0.1, 0.2 updates were much more minor. And I feel like over the last couple of years, Apple has decided, there's nothing wrong with having, new features in the 0.1, 0.2 updates. And they definitely did it in 0.2. So let's talk about some of them because there's some interesting ones here. The one you have on the screen open right now, the post that I did earlier this week.
Yes.
I thought one of the interesting, it's the topic that I led with, and I thought it was one of the more interesting new features was legacy contacts. And I tell you, I mean, it's not as we're thinking about the holidays and we want to be all cheerful, thinking about you or loved members passing away is not the happiest of topic, but it is something prudent to think about. I mean, obviously people, estate planning is important. And I know that, when I remember when my grandmother passed and more recently when my mom passed, one of the ways that I was able to manage some of their digital stuff is they just gave me their passwords. And if you have a loved one that does that, or if you decide to do that for someone else, I mean, my wife has access to my passwords if she needs it through 1Password. That is a simple solution. But sometimes you don't want to necessarily give people your passwords, especially like for yourself, because you don't know if you're going to be hit by a bus tomorrow or 25 years from now. So you don't want to always be giving people your passwords. And so to address this, Apple has this feature called Legacy Contacts, where you can identify one or more people, friends or family, and say you are a legacy contact. And what that means is if you pass away, they have the ability to get access to your iCloud data, which can include, of course, your photos and emails and stuff like that. Now, they can't just ask for it. They have to actually prove that you've passed away by submitting a death certificate and stuff like that. But then it means that it doesn't matter if they have your most recent iCloud password, they can get access. And, I talk about in the context of you passing away, obviously, if one of your loved one passes and you have that, it can be useful to manage all of that stuff. And so I encourage people to do this. It's really simple to go and to do, and I have some links that described how to do it. But setting it up is easy. And I know, having gone through this a number of times where I have been like the executor of estates of family members that have passed away, and there's a lot of things to worry about, and more digital assets is one of them. So this is a good one to use.
Absolutely. It makes me think of almost like this is one of two things that I think are so important and critical for everyone to set up on a phone, and most people just don't even know that they're there. Number one is the medical emergency information, right? You and I have talked about that before. That's built into the phone. I mean, most of us are all going to have the phone with us, and emergency personnel know that on that phone, they can get access without opening or unlocking the phone. They can get access to things like your blood type and, if any allergies you might have. Like setting that up in the health app on your iPhone phone. It's free, completely free, and it's just a no-brainer.
Yeah, an emergency contact too. Somebody finds you, they know who to call.
Like call your spouse or whatever the case. So in the same way, Jeff, I think this legacy contacts, now that it's finally here, Apple talked about this back in the summer, right, at WWDC. So we knew that it was coming. It just took a little bit extra time to come out. But to me, this is a no-brainer. Just because you and I work in sort of the legal circles, I can tell you, even from like a discovery standpoint, or frankly, like you mentioned in here, like if you're a real estate attorney, this is an absolute no-brainer. And just like you've talked about, I lost my father this past year, and the same thing. I had access to his passwords, but that's not always going to be the case. And it's just great to make sure that you set this up. It's free, it's now built in, and you go through and talk about how to set this up, which is great. And in fact, I think you said you can print out something, right? Or you can send a message to the person that you set up as your legacy contact. Is that right?
Yeah, to give them the key so that they need two things to access your account after you pass. One is the key, which you can text to them, or you can print it out and put it in a lockbox or something. And then the second is they have to prove, with the death certificate. So, so that's a good feature. Let me talk about. So there's a bunch of other ones, a bunch of them in 15.2. Here's another interesting one, which is the privacy report. Apple has been doing a lot recently about allowing you to learn more about when apps are looking at your private information. And I was just looking this morning, just before we jumped to the phone, Brett, and I see a great example. So to use this feature, once you've updated to 15.2, go into your settings app, go down to privacy, and then at the very, very bottom of privacy, you'll see app privacy report. And it has all this different information about what apps are doing. And so I'm looking at mine right now, Brett, and I mean, this is interesting. There's a section called app network activity, which is apps, of course, that are, using my network to send and receive things. And the first one that I see listed is messages. Makes good sense. I send messages. They use the network. And then I have Dropbox. That's the second one. That makes sense. I use Dropbox a lot. My number 3 app, Brett, is iHeart, which is iHeartMedia, which is an app. It's sort of like radio stations and stuff. The last time that I've used the iHeartMedia app on my phone, maybe like 2018. I mean, it's been a long time since I've used this app. And yet I see it's been the number 3. And if I tap on it, I can see all these different websites it's been reaching out to. iHeart.com, doubleclick.net, which we know is a tracking site, google.com, some other thing I can't even pronounce, .tv, appmeasurement.com. I mean, this app, which I literally have not used in years, has been doing Lord knows what, reporting things.
That's a little odd.
So, it's, again, I don't know what's going on, but I'm now thinking about, gosh, do I really want this app on my phone? Because I don't know exactly what it's doing. And I'm sure I don't think it's doing anything all that nefarious. But even so, it probably doesn't need to be. And, there are good reasons for apps to be reaching out, to be looking for notifications and stuff like that. But if it's an app that you don't really use, the next time I need to use the iHeartMedia app, I may actually just delete it from my phone. And the next time I want to use it, I'll just download it again. It's something to think about. So it's, again, the point is Apple is now letting you make these decisions, whereas in the past stuff was going on that you just had no idea was going on. So it's nice to have a little bit more information now. And again, I don't know exactly what that app is doing. Maybe it's got some legitimate reasons to be having all this network traffic, even though I haven't used the app.
But now you can make the decision.
I can make the decision.
Right.
So so I think that's a good one. I mean, there's so many other ones.
You were starting to talk about that, and I'm like, okay, well, he listens to the radio, probably then a lot. And man, okay, the fact that you don't, that to me would automatically be a flag. Like, okay, I haven't used this in 2 years. I'm going to delete it, because you can always re-download it if you need it, right? If you need something on there. But anyway, thanks for sharing that. That's a little nervous.
Yeah. So many other features in here. I don't know anyone you want to talk about next. There's just a lot of them. David Sparks, I had linked to his report. California attorney David Sparks, he had noted a bunch of them that I didn't even know about. Like, some of them are small. Like he had noticed, for example, that you can now search for a specific song from within a playlist. So let's say you have a playlist of like Christmas songs. You've got like 50 songs, and you're like, I want to find, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And you can scroll up and down. Now you can just at the very top search for it. I mean, not a feature that I would necessarily use all the time, but it's nice to know that it's there. And he also notices some other things about, a gesture update. And I mentioned this one on my post, that you can swipe up from the bottom left. There's just lots of these little bitty features in here that are useful. One of the really interesting ones is that Apple is that you can actually track trackers. If you think we've talked about this in the past, that you can use AirTags for good and for evil. You can use it to find where your things are, which is great. But if you wanted to be nefarious, you could hide an AirTag in like an ex-girlfriend or something like that, and in theory track them around. But Apple has guarded against that in a number of different ways. It'll give you alert after a period of time. But if you don't want to wait the 12 to 24 hours before you get the alert from your iPhone that something has been tracking you, you can always now with 15.2 just open up the Find My app and just see, is there anything that's been tracking me? So if for some reason, I mean, hopefully no one's in this situation, but I guess sometimes people are, if you just want to check, you just want the security of checking it out, you can just check, which is nice. So I thought that was a nice little improvement too.
Yeah. The other thing he mentioned, that if you have an iPhone 13, right, that has this really interesting macro mode, I believe, and you can verify this, Jeff, that macro mode would automatically turn itself on when it detected that you were very close to an object, and it's like, okay, well, you want to do a macro. Apparently now you can turn that on manually so that it doesn't automatically kick in. That's only for iPhone 13s or 13 Pros or 13 Pro Max on there, but something interesting that
and I totally see that. Anytime I'm taking something, if I'm taking a picture with my camera and I move really close to an object, you can literally see the image sort of judders just a tiny bit as it's switching to the macro mode. I actually don't like it. I don't mind that at all, because it is a little indicator to me that now I'm moving to the macro lens. But if you don't like that and you don't want it to automatically go to the macro lens, you have some more control now.
I'll link to this. David is apparently thinks along the same lines that we do. The legacy contact is his favorite new feature, he says. He actually made a little video. I'll link to that in the show notes in case you want to go and you can watch how you do that. And he said, I know it's morbid, just like you did, but you should do it today. Yeah. So thank you, David, for underscoring that. And then you link to another story, of course, by John Voorhees, another attorney on Mac Stories. And he always does a great job of kind of going in through some additional detail on some of this. That privacy report, like he has his screenshots here about what it shows from his privacy report, which again, that's quite interesting. And there was something else too. Oh, I think we may have talked about this last time. The hide my email. If you have if you subscribe to iCloud at all, or pay for additional iCloud storage, you should have a subscription. And I think that comes with that. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but there's a hide my email now, so that you don't have to send places your actual email address. You can now change it, or it'll just basically give you like a throwaway email address. Right. Information will still come to you. I know it sounds a little weird. It'll still come to you. It's what we call an email alias, I believe, is kind of how it sets it up. It's a little bit different, but it just basically masks your original email, which is, again, another nice privacy aspect as well.
Another one that I mentioned is that now you have, and this is something Apple mentioned this summer, but you have an additional 5 hours to find your phone, up to 5 hours, that if you leave your iPhone somewhere, and even when it gets to the point where the battery is so low that in my mind, I would say it turned itself off. But the reality is the screen is off. It looks like it's off, but it actually has just a couple more hours of life that it can use to alert things, like if somebody else with an iPhone passes by you, to sort of alert the network, hey, I'm here, and to help you find your device. And I'm sometimes those things are useful. Gosh, I just used it this week, not for my iPhone, but I got home and I reached my pocket to get my AirPod Pros out of there, and they weren't there. And I'm like, where are my AirPods? Like, did they fall out of my pocket? Where is it? And so I looked at Find My, and like 2 minutes, it said 2 minutes ago they were in your office. I'm like, okay, well, if somebody passed by them 2 minutes ago, then they're still sitting in my office. I'll have to get them tomorrow. But it's nice to be able to use Find My to find objects, whether it's your phone, your AirPods, your luggage, for AirTags. All these things that we're talking about sort of work together, and it's nice to have more features there.
It sounds like Apple is continuing to expand this. Originally we thought about this as Find My iPhone, right? When this feature first came out, that's all we called it. Find My iPhone. But then it worked for the iPad, so it was Find My iPhone or Find My iPad. Now it works for the AirPods. It also works for the Macs. It works for AirTags. It works for the Apple Watch. It basically works for any Apple device, to the point where I think I'm slowly seeing Apple change this to the Find My network. Because now, in addition to just like a simple, like, okay, where was the last time that the iPhone pinged the internet? Now the Find My network not only includes that, like the last time it connected to the internet, but now it has these kind of I don't know if it's Bluetooth network or the what is it, the NFID or the some, there's different wireless technologies, Jeff, that underline that obviously escape me right now, but they're all being used together to the point where, when the AirTag came out, people were like, well, how is that little tiny disc going to connect to the internet? Well, it doesn't, right? It works because it's Bluetooth and some of the near detection with other iPhones. And the fact that this is now getting built into other devices like the iPhone. And in fact, if you power your iPhone down, I see there's even a little message now on you can turn it off, and it says, Find My iPhone will still be enabled, or it will still be allowed on this. So I'm starting to see it in a little bit of a bigger picture, I think, of where Apple is going with this. It's not just a Find My iPhone anymore. It is a Find My network, to where it will connect not just to the single iPhone, but basically all your devices that can be part of your iCloud account. So anyway,
it's great. And what's nice about Apple
revelation this past week.
What's nice about it is that, unlike, you can imagine if other companies had tried to implement this, they wouldn't have privacy baked in. But Apple, again, I'm not saying Apple is perfect on privacy issues, but that they think about it. How many times have we talked about it just in the last 15 minutes on a number of different contexts that, they're always thinking about it from the beginning. And so, it's going to be a network, a Find My network, that allows you to find things and people and everything else, and yet does so in a way that respects privacy. So, which is it's a tough needle to thread, but they're constantly trying to do it. So,
John Voorhees also discusses that there are new glyphs.
I didn't even
in the
notice
San Francisco symbols. Okay, that's sort of the bottom of the news, as it were.
There's a lot there. There's a lot in 15.2. So go ahead and update.
I think we've hit the main ones, though, right? The legacy contacts, obviously great. A couple of additional gestures aspects on there. Okay, so and I was talking about this yesterday. I was speaking to a group of lawyers all day yesterday, and I still continue to tell people, when it's a major upgrade from 13 to 14 or 14 to 15, it's okay if you might want to hang back a week or so. Let those of us that are guinea pigs to jump right on. And if there's any bugs that need to get squashed, then Apple will do that within just a few weeks of releasing a very major upgrade. But these smaller updates, 15.1, 15.2, I don't have any qualms saying, yes, you need to upgrade. Now, they all include some, highlights like we've talked about, the legacy contacts, but there is also a slew of underlying security patches and updates and stuff like that are included. And that's probably why I say it's not so much for the new features, although those are great, but I also tell people there's a slew of bullet points that Apple does post, but no one really cares to read. Those are just all the back end updates on there. So I am always saying it's worthwhile to upgrade to those smaller upgrades on there. From 15.2, let's talk about another major update that a lot of people were reporting on today on a photo app, which I know I've used before. It sounds like you've used PixelMator. PixelMator, PixelMator. It's been around for a long time. They have continued to update. I've used it on the Mac for a long time. PixelMator, at least one version of the app we can discuss, came out on the iPad, I don't know how long ago, but they just released the same version for the iPhone, which I think is amazing.
Yeah. So PixelMator, in fact, even on the iPad, I think there's at least two versions. There's like something just called PixelMator, right, and then there's something called PixelMator Photo. But the one that you want to get is PixelMator Photo, and it came out, I don't know, a few years ago for the iPad, and it is really my go-to app. The built-in Photos app is pretty powerful. But if I want to do anything more sophisticated with editing photos, PixelMator Photo on my iPad is wonderful. It has got so many features. It works great with the Apple Pencil. It's got fantastic, really best in class techniques for like erasing things if you want to like fix a blemish in somebody's face, or if there's something in the background you want to erase or something like that. It works really, really, really well. And so I've owned PixelMator Photo for the iPad probably since the day it came out, and I've used it tremendously. So what happened this week is now PixelMator Photo is updated to version 2.0. And instead of just working on the iPad, it also works on the iPhone. Now, let me begin by saying that if you already own PixelMator Photo on the iPad, like I did, when you go to get it on the App Store, I have a link to it in my post today. When you click on it, it will still say it's on a half price sale right now, so it's $4 instead of $8. It will have the price on there, and if you tap it, it'll actually ask you, you sure you want to buy it, and you'll click on the side, and you'll go through the process as if you're paying $4. But right after you say go ahead and buy it, it will then pop up and say, oh, you own a previous version of this app, the 1.0 version that you own on the iPad. And so it actually won't charge you. But I'll tell you, you literally get to that last step before it tells you, by the way, I didn't charge you. It's only $4, so it's not a huge deal. But so I think it's worth it if you haven't paid for it. And if you already have paid for it, don't worry, you won't be charged again. But once you get it on the iPhone, this is one of these things that when you have an app that's so powerful, you wonder, well, how are they going to translate that to the tiny little screen on the iPhone? But I got to tell you, Brett, they did a pretty good job. I mean, it's through menus and stuff, but as I've been playing around with it for the last 24 hours, just about, I mean, I think it's all there. I mean, things there. And so a perfect example of it is, and if you use the app for no other thing, just this magic eraser feature. The eraser feature is so useful because you know the iPhone is the device that I'm often using to take pictures.
Exactly.
And so it makes so much sense that if I'm going to fix something after I just took a picture, or I took a picture during the day and I'm looking at my phone that night, it just makes sense that that's the place where I might also want to fix the picture. And using PixelMator Photo, you're showing it on the screen right now. A perfect example of there's somebody in the background who was in the beach, and you don't want them in the back of your picture. Photo bombing, so to speak, you can just, erase them very quickly. And it's a really, really good eraser. It works great. Now, on the Photos app for the Mac, it has an eraser feature, and it's okay. But for the Photos app for the iPhone and iPad, it doesn't have an eraser feature. And I've always wondered, why hasn't Apple put this on the iPhone and iPad? Maybe they will one day. But in the meantime, even if I had it in the built-in app, I've always thought that PixelMator Photo does a better job. It's just a smarter version of it. So, for that one feature alone, it's great. But that is one of a million features, adjusting the colors and the lights and the intensity and the saturation. The stuff that you can do in a simplistic way on the Photos app is just a lot more sophisticated here. So big thumbs up for me for PixelMator Photo. In fact, one other thing I'll mention before I let you go is it has a nice feature that when you're using the iPhone, if you edit a photo and you make a couple edits and you want to say, gosh, have I really made it better or worse? Here's a little tip. If you tap on the screen, just tap and release your finger for about a second, you will see the original version of the photo, and then it will go back to the edited version. So you can see, gosh, is what I'm doing making it better? But the way that, which is fine, but the way that PixelMator does it, and you're showing it on the screen right now, is it has a feature where it has a slider, a left-right slider that you can move, where you have the old version on the left and the new version on the right. And for me, I actually find it more useful to see them side by side, because then my eye can literally see, gosh, yeah, I do like what I've done. Or maybe I've gone too far and I want to dial it back a little bit. So it's a tiny little feature. And I'm not saying that one is right or one is wrong. They're just different ways to do the same thing, but it's nice to have a different approach, and PixelMator Photo does it. So I'm a big fan of iPhone photography, and I love having great tools. And this is a really, really good one. So I'm thrilled that it's now on the iPhone.
I guess I understand why PixelMator did the iPad first. Most photographers, professional photographers, will use an iPad literally to take pictures and then suck them right into their iPad. It's a nice, big, beautiful screen, and they can make their edits and everything. But just like what you said, Jeff, I don't take pictures on my iPad, and I'm not a professional photographer, but I do take pictures all the time on my iPhone. And it just makes sense that, I've used a variety of different photo editing apps, and I don't want anything sophisticated. I know there's out there, but that's just not what I need. And it sounds like this is going to be absolutely perfect to just make those tiny little edits, just to brush something out or to maybe change the color. I love this little slider thing. I cannot wait. But I'm so glad you mentioned about the price, because I did have it on the iPad, and it shows it here on my iPhone that I've got to pay for it. So now I'm going to take you at your word, and I'm going to
see live on air. Is Jeff telling the truth?
I'm going to brave it going through, because it's like, wait a minute, I'm not going to pay for it again. Although I got to tell you, I would pay for it again. That's how much I think that this PixelMator app is good. Oh, and now I don't know if you can search for it in the actual store yet. It doesn't seem to come up on the iPhone.
Yeah,
yet,
and
but
it's
from
because
your
it's such a
blog
new app.
post.
There you go.
It'll link. All right, so I'm tapping the price on here. Yep, it says double click to pay. And even if I have to pay, I will, because that's how much I like PixelMator on there. This update is free because you own a previous version. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. To get this update now, select OK.
So I think what that really shows, Brett, is just pay attention to what I say. Just listen to Jeff. I think we've learned that. If we've learned nothing else today, that's what we've all learned.
Well, so then listen to Jeff, create a legacy contact, and get PixelMator Pro. It is right now $399, which is incredible. It's 50% off. It normally is $799. So go and get it. I mean, you're not going to be sorry. Plus, it's for your iPad and your iPhone. It is an amazing app, and I am thrilled to have it now. This will be my go-to app for anything on the
and great for the holidays. If you're
sure.
Probably about to take a lot of pictures of
New
Year's and Christmas and whatever you celebrate, you're going to have lots of opportunities to take pictures.
It just this little GIF from Jason Snell on how he's just erasing a man in the ocean. It's a beautiful picture of the ocean, and he just smudges it out, and it looks like it was never there. Yeah. That's incredible. Like, I remember seeing this in the movies, and we now have this capability right in our
pocket. Yeah,
great.
Crazy.
Okay, so that's PixelMator for photos. How about if we had this same tool for scans? How do you like that little?
That's a nice transition.
What if,
Brett, what if I had a PDF file? What would I do?
I've got an answer for you. So one of our favorite apps, I know both of us use this. I use this probably at least 2 or 3 times a week, is Scanner Pro from Readdle. We like all things Readdle, Readdle, and Scanner Pro. I think, Jeff, it used to be like a $4 app, but I think they have switched to a subscription. I think it's like $20 a year, which to me is not a problem. Maybe you can, if you're able to confirm that. But to me, completely worth it, because this is literally my scanner in my pocket. The camera on my iPhone is, I think, better than any desktop scanner that I have. Now, that doesn't mean the scans are necessarily always better on the iPhone, but I will basically use the Scanner Pro app to scan documents. I did it yesterday. I've been doing it for my son. He has to actually do handwritten math problems. He's got the X and Y axis and graphs he's having to do, but he has to submit that, right, to his online class. So I'll use the Scanner Pro app to take a picture of that. I can adjust the contrast and the brightness and make sure that it all looks good, and I can send that to him as a PDF that he can upload. Well, they just announced, which, by the way, they just announced a few weeks ago this category, automatic categories. So they now, 2 or 3 weeks later, have a magic eraser button in here, which looks good. I just tested it for a couple of things. Like if you're holding a piece of paper and you're scanning it, you can now magically erase your fingers out of that. Or, sometimes a document has a fold in it or something, and I like to be able to erase that out. That's the Scanner Pro Magic Eraser.
Yeah. And that's useful because lots of times, if you have a perfectly flat piece of paper and a perfectly flat surface, great. But sometimes when I'm scanning a piece of paper, the piece of paper got folded or is just not perfect. Right. And so I actually will use my finger because I want it to be flat when I take a picture of it. So I'll sometimes have to use like my thumb to hold on the bottom and my finger to hold the top. And so then my fingers will be sort of poking in the side. It's like, I don't want that on the final scan. No. But now, chip, you can just quickly erase it. I haven't tried this, but the blog post describing the feature said, even if you had like a coffee stain on the side, you could erase that too. So It's nice to get a clean scan. I mean, I've said this before, I can get a better scan using a dedicated scanner. Like here in my office, our photocopy machines have built-in scanner features. Mm-hmm. And if I walk, to the other side of the office and I put in the piece of paper, that's going to often be better quality. But, usually I don't need the pristine quality. I just want a quick scan of a receipt or a letter or something like that. And Scanner Pro is more than good enough. I mean, in the old days, it's like, well, it's okay. But nowadays it's often really, really good. So even if it's a slight stop below, but then features like this make it even more powerful than the scanner down the road, because I can remove a little blemish, as it were, from the document that I'm scanning, the contract. So good feature. So yet another app with a great eraser feature.
Something I'll just quickly say, I noticed this. I know that they've had this in the app for a while. If you go into the settings of Scanner Pro, they have something called shadow removal, which I liked because, again, similar to the way like I would set a piece of paper down on the desktop or the counter, and sometimes it has a fold if it was folded, and that would create a shadow, or the light was kind of weird and where I was taking it. But the shadow removal is amazing. They do a really good job because you can convert it to a black and white document or a color document or a grayscale document. And now with this Magic Eraser, and by the way, once you tap on Magic Eraser, I think you mentioned this maybe, you can change the size of like your finger smudge. So you can get very precise if you need to on marking something out like a coffee stain on your fingers. Just great stuff. And thank you, Readdle, for continuing to update the Scanner Pro app. That's really great. So that's all the erasing, photo erasing, PDF erasing news that we have for you today. Let's talk about something a little weird and quirky. Apple is developing apps for Android. Well, maybe only one app on here.
It doesn't happen very often.
That came out.
There's an Apple Music app for Android. So, I mean, that's been around for a while. Every once in a while, Apple will have an Android app. But this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with AirTags, that, the nefarious side of AirTags, that what if somebody is using one to track you? On an iPhone, as I mentioned, it will built in automatically without you doing anything. It will alert you if it looks like a tag has been following you for the past, X, period of time. I think it's about a day. It will say, gosh, did you know that this thing has been following you? And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I knew it was there. I'm using my wife's luggage and that's fine. Or it's like, no, what the heck are you talking about? Let me investigate. Right. But if for Android, although if you encountered an AirTag with Android, you could put your phone next to it and get some information about it. This app that Apple has released for Android, which is called Tracker Detect. Yes. My understanding is that this is not something you would use for AirTags you own. You need an Apple device for that. Yeah. But it's just a way that an Android person could have something on their phone that's just detecting if something is tracking them. So again, it's a nice little feature. If any of your friends are Android users, and if they have any possible concerns about somebody using an AirTag. Now, again, all this only works for AirTags. There's many other devices out there made by companies like Tile and others, and it's not going to help you if those are tracking you. But it's just a minor thing. I thought it was a nice thing for Apple to release.
It was, and apparently there are some developers, maybe one or two, I'm sure there's more, that are Android developers in the Apple spaceship. And it's great because, it, like you said, it's not so much for Android users to use AirTags, although maybe they could, but it's really just like, okay, Apple says, we know that AirTags really are tied to iPhones, but if you have an Android, we want you to at least be able to know how to detect it. There was a story, I don't think we talked about a couple weeks ago, where I think it was up in Canada, where thieves were basically putting AirTags inside cars or somehow putting it on cars, following the cars home to wherever they lived, and then they would steal the car from the home as opposed to like a parking lot or something like that. Yeah. And so to me, that's a little scary for all of us. But having something like this, even if you have an Android phone, if nothing else, it would at least tell you or maybe give you a kind of a heads up or a flag or something to say, there could be something here, and you just might want to check on it.
Yeah. So it does make you wonder though, Brett, I wonder if there's like one guy or gal that works for Apple in Cupertino, and like maybe their job is to make the Windows and the Android apps. It's sort of like, for years at Microsoft, they always had a very good, and they still do have a very good Mac business team. It's like the people that work for Microsoft but make Apple apps. It's just sort of funny, of course, in the world we live in, that makes perfect sense. But
well, I clicked through on the Google Play Store. Here's the Tracker Detect app, and like I think you said, there's an Apple Music app and an Apple TV app for Android devices. There's a Beats app, which I guess is somehow for the Beats. Here's my favorite.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, actually. I've heard good things about this app.
Really? Okay. Yeah. It's called Move to iOS. So I guess if you have an Android device, you want to move everything to the iPhone. This is another Apple app that they've made for Android devices. Move to iOS.
Absolutely.
I guess I'm laughing at it, but I guess it is useful, right? It's basically, it looks like it transfers all the data.
Move your information, move your data, move your contacts.
Okay, well that could be useful. Yeah. It's just I think it's funny that Apple is like, hey, we'll give you an Android app, but it's only if you want to move to iPhone, right?
Exactly. It's funny.
I love it. All right, so let's talk about this could be a little inside baseball from the legal perspective. This was a great article. I saw this earlier this week as well. It's from a Uptime Jurist page. Again, this is legal software, but the author talked about keyboard shortcuts for legal symbols, and especially how to enter the section symbol into your documents. Now, what I love about it that who is this? Jordan Hobbs goes into detail about keyboard shortcuts for both Windows and Mac computers, and this is even using things like the Alt key and the Option key on the Mac and the Alt key on Windows, which, if you don't know and you don't do this very often, it's very useful to know, and including the paragraph symbol or the copyright symbol or the trademark symbol or the registered trademark symbol. And the reason I'm glad that you linked to it in your post today, Jeff, is because this is one of my go-to tips for the iPad, is that he talks about on the iPhone or the iPad, you can there are some hidden symbols on there. Now, you wrote about this many years ago. I know you and I have talked about this. There are some hidden symbols on the on-screen keyboard for the iPad and for the iPhone, for like vowels, for example. You can tap and hold on an E, and you get all of the additional options for different vowels in different languages with accent symbols, that kind of a thing. Or the $sign. If you tap and hold the $sign, it comes up with a cent symbol. Or the ampersand. If you tap and hold the ampersand on the on-screen keyboard, it comes up with the section symbol on there. So you can add that. And then he goes into how you can create your own keyboard shortcuts for all kinds of symbols on here, which I think is great.
Yeah. And, I think of these from the context of being a lawyer using the section or the paragraph symbol. But of course, anyone could use these different symbols from time to time.
Yeah,
and of all of these alternative symbols, there's really only one of them, the section symbol, that you can do using the keyboard. If you hold down the ampersand key on the iPhone, it will make the section symbol. But if you want the paragraph symbol, which is also called the Pilcrow, if you want to be fancy, or if you want any of these other symbols, you can't actually type them on the iPhone. But what you can do, as you said, is you can like copy it from someplace on the internet and you can paste it in as a shortcut. And so like I have it like on my iPhone, anytime I type like these three letters together that I would normally never type except to make the paragraph symbol, then it will replace those letters with the paragraph symbol. And so now I can add that. So if you have any of these little symbols that you might want to create from time to time, or even something again that you can correct. I mean, one, for example, is like the bullet, the little dot that's sort of dark. There's a couple different sizes of it. And there's one that I sort of like to use sometimes. And so I have a little shortcut for it. Not that I can't access it from the keyboard, but it's easier for me to remember my own shortcut for it. So if you find that there are these symbols that you want to enter from time to time, using the text replacement feature is a great way to make it easier to use the characters.
I do this for several. I think I even do like an Apple symbol. Like when I want to tap.
Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah.
Apple logo, which is a little tiny symbol. I've copied that and I put it in a text replacement. Or another one that I see that I have is like I guess I call it the care of symbol. It's like C/O.
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
I love using these little symbols, and I've got them all in that text replacement. And Jason, in this article, I'll link to in the show notes, goes through, does a good job of kind of showing you how you can just go find the symbol, whatever you want to type on the internet somewhere, like you said, Jeff, copy that, go into the keyboard text replacement section, and you can create your own little shortcuts. And that's great. So thank you for linking to that. That could already have been one. That
could have been one of our in the know tips, but it's not. So,
but it's not. Bonus. All right. Actually, I'm going to give you the tip that I had for today. I talked about this yesterday, and I think I'm going to do a video review on my website on this. I've known about this app for a very long time, and the reason that I came upon it many years ago is because when I do work with lawyers or clients that they have a conversation in their text messages that they need to preserve, right? So again, from like a discovery standpoint, unfortunately, if a lot of times if it's domestic issues, right? A lot of times the way that the spouses and the people involved are communicating are not email, they're usually text messages, or even today like WhatsApp or something else similar to that. And so they've got this very long conversation, maybe spanning several days, in their text messages or the iMessages or WhatsApp or whatever the case may be. And what they would like to do to preserve that or to prove it or show it or whatever is they continue to take screenshots of their text messages. So if you got this long scrolling text message, you take a screenshot of the first few messages, scroll up a little bit, take another screenshot, scroll up a little bit, take another screenshot, and you continue on, rinse and repeat. So all of those screenshots then get saved into your photos roll. which is great. It's great that they're there because you can pull them up. It's not the best way that I would say that you've, at least from a legal perspective, that you would collect and preserve text messages, but it is certainly better than nothing. Mm-hmm. The thing is, though, all of those photos have the entire screen of the iPhone. And by the way, Stitch It is also an app that's available for Android. But you can open Stitch It, the app, and it's free, although the free version has ads and it limits you to 3 images. But you open the Stitch It app and you can pull those photos from your photo roll and you can stitch them together. If you pay, I think it's $2.99 or maybe even just $2, $1.99, you unlock the Pro, which takes the ads away, and then you can have unlimited images. And so what this does is it allows you to arrange all of those screenshots into a very long, tall image. It allows you to crop each image. So you can take off the bottom part or the top part so that it kind of looks like a seamless scroll, as it were. And in addition to that, once you're done creating that long, you can go in and actually redact certain pieces of information. For example, if you got a phone number you don't want somebody to see, you can go in and it's got a built-in little redaction thing. It's not very sophisticated, but it's good enough for what you need. You can redact that or put a black box around the phone number so that somebody can't necessarily see that. And when you're done, that just creates a JPEG image that saves back into your photo roll. I talk about this app all the time because it's so simple in what it does. The developer just updated it, I think, a couple of months ago, so that it's still active. It looks a little primitive still, but he's still very active in developing this. It's called Stitch It. I'll have a link to it. As I said, it's a free app if you want to try it just to see what it looks like. There's a few other apps that do this in the App Store, but I have found this consistently over the years does, I think, one of the best jobs. And again, it just gives you that nice, beautiful, seamless, long flowing, either PDF or JPEG image of all of your conversation. And I've been talking about it lastly in the context of text messages. But Jeff, it works great for like a Twitter conversation or a Facebook profile or an Instagram profile. It basically will work in just about anything that you need to take several screenshots and stitch them all together. So Stitch It is my app and in the know tip for the day.
I'm glad you recommended this app because I have 1 or 2 other apps that I have used over the years for this. I don't do this a lot, but I've never recommended them because they all have sort of like, I haven't found one that I really feel is worth recommending. And so I'm glad that this is one that you've had some success with. Because I'm gonna buy it now, and just because it's one of those things, just a good tool to have for when you need it. So
it is.
Thank you.
And like you said, you're not going to use it all the time, and people could just get all the images together, but it makes it very easy to stitch it all together. And again, it is a little primitive looking, but he's still supporting it, and it's one of the best that I found.
Good. That's good to know. So my in the know tip of the week is a feature going back to a PixelMator photo in case you needed another reason to use the app. There's just one specific feature it has called ML, which stands for machine learning. ML super resolution. Now, what this does is, how you watch one of those CSI shows and they have a picture and they zoom in and it's all pixelated, and then like they press a button and instantly it's a clear picture. And you're like, that's not real. In real life, you can't just make it a perfect picture from zooming in. Well, you sort of can, because what this app will do is if you have usually the quality of a picture I take with my iPhone is fine, but if I really crop down, like I really want to get cropped into something that is in the distance, you'll get to the point where the picture is sort of pixelated and it doesn't look perfect. And usually there's not really much you can do about it, because how is the iPhone going to know how to fill in the missing spaces between the big blocky pictures? But what PixelMator does, and the reason the ML is in there is, the way that machine learning works in a whole bunch of contexts is, instead of having a specific person saying that, anytime you see like a red block here and a red block there, you should put one in between it to make it more seamless. If individual people had to make the decisions of how to do that, you would never be able to program that. But what you can do with machine learning is you can say, I'm just going to give you a bajillion pictures, and you, the fancy computers, I want you to look at those bajillion pictures.
You do it
and figure out, come up with your own way of figuring out between this and that, what should go between it. The one that you're showing on your screen right now is a perfect example of it. That on the left, when you zoom into it, it looks sort of pixelated, but on the right, it looks perfectly clear. And so this feature, if you crop images and you find that your image is just a little pixelated, try the ML super resolution picture in PixelMator photo. Now, let me tell you, when I use this feature, I would say probably 50 to 75% of the time, it doesn't make a huge difference or not enough of a difference.
Okay.
But about 25% of the time, it will make a huge difference. The one that you're showing right now, a picture of a photo, is just, I mean, the before and after is so much better. And for those 25% of the times that it makes a big difference, it is a much better picture that you're like, how is this even possible? It is, it is approaching magic that it works. So yet another reason that I encourage, and this works on the iPad, now works on the iPhone too. I was playing with it last night, and I had a picture that was sort of a cropped in thing that was in the background that I was zooming in on. And the picture looks so much better. Now, sometimes it can go a little too far and make it look a tiny bit unrealistic in places. So again, it's not going to be perfect in every picture, but when it works, it's great. So this is my recommendation, is the ML Super Resolution feature in PixelMator Photo.
And this is PixelMator Photo, which has been on the iPad, but now, as we talked about earlier, is come to the iPhone.
Yeah. And if you use a Mac, by the way, they have an app called PixelMator Pro, which has the same feature on it too. It started on the computer, and then over time they brought it to the iPad, and now they brought it to the iPhone. But it's a super powerful feature.
Yeah, there is. So there is, you mentioned this earlier, there is PixelMator for iOS. That's like the older, like pro version of PixelMator on the iPad, I believe, and maybe it'll be on the iPhone. And then PixelMator Pro is for the Mac. You just said that. And what we really have been talking about today, I'm really saying this for my own benefit. PixelMator Photo is the one that has come to the iPhone today. It's been on the iPad. And I think probably for the vast majority of people that are listening, that PixelMator Photo is going to be more than what you're going to need. Unless you're a high-end professional photographer, then maybe you can go up to the Pro or the PixelMator, original PixelMator app for the iPad. Oh, but that's great. I can't wait to try this now, because I just downloaded PixelMator Photo from my iPhone. And now I want to test out the amazing ML resolution on there. That's great. That's fantastic. Okay, I think we're done. Thanks for sharing that, Jeff. I appreciate it. Next week, next Friday is actually Christmas Eve. And so we are taking off for Christmas Eve. And I think our plans is for the next week, which would be New Year's Eve, right? December 31st. We are going to try to get together in some form or fashion and have have a podcast. So we'll keep everybody updated. But next week we're off for Christmas Eve. So Merry Christmas to everyone.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Thanks, Brett. Goodbye, everybody.